We've gotten, Marketo certifications, people have become
Yeah.
champions. And I think that world is coming to an end rapidly, right? And so now your expertise doesn't really work. And like for Clay, I think, they'd started a certification program, then they ended it, realizing the tool was changing and the space was changing so fast. And I really agree with that approach. I think the older I get, the more certifications I've got under my belt. I'm like, this really doesn't matter. The best ops people I know really aren't so laser focused. And then GTM engineering, I think, is different. I was thinking about this as I was preparing for a podcast today. And I'm like, when I think of a go to market engineer, I actually don't think of someone who's very developed in any one area. I think it's somebody who thinks about things like, hey, like how can I connect these different processes and systems together to drive a specific business outcome? And you still need people who have spent their time understanding how a process should look. What are the friction points? What does the underlying data look like, right? So I think those are the strengths that ops can still bring to the table, is like really understanding their one specific use case, whether that's lead scoring, whether that's, sending out compelling emails, and working with the go-to-market engineer to make sure that those processes are engineered properly, right? But I do still think go-to-market requires a complete shift away from thinking about a very specific thing to a broad lens where you really are thinking from like an engineering lens of like, how can I connect systems? How can I remove problems and solve this problem? So I'm not 100% sure that every ops person will make it, but I think you either make that shift where you start thinking like a go-to-market engineer, or you figure out a way that maybe you can be more creative. Like if you were somebody who sat in marketing ops, instead of being like, okay, I'm going to get your campaign that you came up with out the door, you can instead, help your end user and be like, hey, I've noticed that you've been setting these campaigns. These are the ones that perform really well. And by the way, I used AI to go and research that the demographic you're going after really frequents this coffee shop. Next ABM campaign, maybe you send them something or host an event here, So like find a way to add value with the tools that you have at your disposal. And I think that's where I think there would be a valuable shift. Not sure, I can predict the whole market, but I think there's going to be a shift and it's already happening.
No, that's great. And I kind of share your vision. And if you said it, like those certifications, they were used to be a proof like, okay, this guy or this girl knows how to use this tool and this specific sub feature and stuff like that. But if we automate all of this now, okay, those skills are not useful anymore, not at this level anyway. And there are multiple ways to recycle yourself, maybe as an ops. And as you said, you can go on the creative side, like, okay, I have all this power of AI and automation at my disposal. How can I make my job and the output and the life of my colleagues and coworkers better by, as you said, going deeper into a campaign idea or whatever it can be? That would be the creative path. And the other path could be being a bit more technical, because as you said, if you want to automate something and optimize it, you still need to understand what's underneath and what's the micro detail that your automation should handle, at least when you set it up for your specific context. So you could, again, have this barbell example going one way or the other, but everything in the middle is kind of condemned to disappear. Would you agree with that as well at this micro level, I would say?
Yeah, and I say this with a lot of sympathy as also somebody who, if I wasn't lucky enough to be hired by the right companies at the right time, I think this could have been a really challenging time for me. But yes, I think, being somebody who's just executed a campaign, and I've, managed teams of people who just did this one very specific thing really well and with such grace with difficult stakeholders, right? But yeah, I don't think that world exists anymore, where knowing a specific tool, being an expert in something that is like a technical tool, is almost like, being an expert in Excel is kind of outdated. I think now being like a Marketo or a HubSpot is going to be outdated, especially if I go to some of these tools, I'm on their product advisory boards and things like that, and I see, oh, they're actually shifting to make that work super automated too. And I've asked the question like, hey, now what happens to those of us who spent our careers around this tool? They're like, well, hopefully you've grown up. And I'm like, yeah, but like, what about the new grads? So there's a lot of things I don't know. But yes, unfortunately, I do think that era has come to an end.
Yeah, yeah. It's tough. Of course, every revolution brings new opportunities, but also will probably create some dramas for people being left behind. Some might completely change their career. But I would understand someone being like, I've been 10 years in this tool and now they have an AI feature that does half what I was doing. That can be tough for sure. But yeah, I think that there are as many opportunities as doors closing at the same time. And it's kind of mandatory because if we zoom out a little, not talking about just this AI automation of GTM. That also happened, as you said, with Excel. Like the first person using Excel in accounting or whatever was probably removing a lot of extra steps done by humans before. And now we are like, okay, that's the norm. And we still need those thousands of people in accounting to do whatever they do in accounting.
Right.
So it might take some time and some friction, of course, but after a few steps, we might get to a point where it's like, okay, yeah, that's basically the new norm. That's how we do things now. We don't spend time clicking into HubSpot or Clay. We do this and that.